He walked. For how many years no one could say. We found him in a place where nothing else moved. No wind, no plant, no sky to measure time. Just an infinite colorless plain. There was no sun to follow, no shadows to track, no mountains to guide him. If he changed his direction, nothing in that world could have shown it. There were no reference point, no before and no after, just motion without meaning. His eyes were sullen and protruding, they constantly grazed empty space around him, yet never found anything to rest on. It was as if he had been stripped of every concept, every memory. He did not look like someone making choices. He moved like someone half asleep, walking inside a dream. He didn't walk so much as drag himself forward. At any moment, he looked ready to collapse onto the pale ground, and that ground was strange. You couldn't tell what it was made of. It didn't invite curiosity. It was just there, silent, flat, and indifferent. In all that silence, only one sound stood out, a faint rattling at his waist. Small pouch hung from him, swinging with each step, making a dry, whispering noise. That sound in this empty world was more noticeable than the man himself. Inside the pouch were grains of dust. As he walked, they toppled over one another, each grain seeming to press against the fabric, as if they wanted to escape. But the pouch was tied with surprising care. He seemed unable to accept losing even a single grain. So he walked, and we watched, waiting for this strange ritual to mean something. After what felt like countless hours, something changed. His appearance shifted, his behavior shifted. It was as if something far away, invisible to us, had caught his attention and shaken him awake. His pace changed. His eyes, once empty, now held a spark of intention. His face showed a faint new liveliness. He was walking toward a grain of dust. There, on the ground before him, just a few paces away, lay a single speck, no different from the dust in his pouch. And yet, in that endless void, this one grain stood out to him. Watching him, we realized something. He seemed to truly live only in these moments, these rare encounters with a solitary grain of dust, and the rest of his existence was buried in a deep, dreamlike slumber. His life was a repeating scene, endless wandering, then a sudden awakening at the sight of a single grain. Before he even reached the speck, his hand was already moving. He stretched his long, bony fingers forward, like a predator trembling at the sight of a defenseless prey. In an instant, he reached the grain. With painstaking care, almost with a craftsman's precision, he picked it up and placed it into his pouch. The moment the grain disappeared inside, his eyes dulled again. He straightened his back, turned, and resumed his slow, dragging walk in some direction. His body convulsed slightly with each step, but his face was empty once more. Nothing changed, unless another grain of dust appeared. We realized we might have to wait years, maybe decades, before seeing him stop again, to repeat the same ritual. Awaken at the sight of a grain, gather it, and fall back into the trance. Time passed, and we had no clocks, except we only had them. Eventually, we noticed something different. His pouch was now full, so full that it no longer hung easily from his waist. He shifted it, strapping it onto his back like a heavy pack. He walked on, but now he looked even more strained than before. His body seemed constantly on the verge of collapsing under the weight he carried without complaint. It was hard to watch. Anyone seeing him would have felt pity, a prisoner of his own burden, carrying the dust of an entire world on his back without a visible purpose, without a clear future. And yet, he never stopped. One day, in the midst of all this endless quest, he spotted another grain of dust in the distance. It lay on the ground as if longing to join its companions. Joy seized him again. His steps became urgent, almost eager. He hurried towards the tiny speck as fast as his frail legs would allow. He stood above it and bent down to pick it up, but this time, the worn-out pouch could no longer bear its burden. As he moved, the stitching finally gave way. It tore apart. The dust, every last grain he had collected, poured out. The contents spilled onto the pale ground, spreading around his feet, forming a loose, regular halo of dust. He heard the soft, dry sound of the pouch ripping and the grains scattering. He looked down, astonished. What he saw, he could not understand. His eyes were used to seeing one grain at a time, never thousands. Now he faced a countless multitude of tiny specks, each one visible, each one distinct. He stood motionless, unable to grasp how much lay before him. We don't know how much time passed. It might have been days, it might have been years, but slowly his vision began to adjust. Instead of seeing just a single grain, he recognized two, then three, then more. Forced into stillness, he discovered a new teacher, patience. With enough time, he began to comprehend the whole picture, the entire field of scattered dust around his feet. Even as he understood more, he remained frightened and uncertain. It was as if for the first time he felt the full power of having a self, a will he could direct according to his own intention. He raised his head and looked at the vast plain. But the image on the ground, those countless specks of dust, stayed in his mind. Whenever he looked up, that picture followed him, engraved into the fabric of his world. Curious and hesitant, he looked down once more. This time, with effort, he moved his foot. The dust shifted. He froze with his step, stunned. The pattern had changed. The smallest movement had created a new image. He held that posture for an impossibly long time. Then he slowly lifted his head and realized something even more startling. The new picture formed by the disturbed dust now seemed to dominate the empty plain. Whenever he looked, two distinct images stood side by side in his perception, the original arrangement and the altered one. Both cut through the emptiness with their presence. At first, these two pictures had no clear boundaries. They were just random clusters of dust. No harmony, no meaning. But as he stared, he began to notice differences. Once he saw those differences, boundaries formed in his mind. He realized that one picture was not the other. They were separated not only in shape but in distance. For the first time, distance itself became real to him. Driven by a growing passion, he looked down again. This time, with deliberate effort, he intentionally rearranged some of the grains. He moved them not by accident but by choice. Then he stepped back and stared at his new creation. He repeated this process, changed the pattern of the dust, looked up at the empty plain, looked down and adjusted more grains. Each time a new image appeared. Each time his understanding deepened. With infinity at his right shoulder and patience at his left, he continued his slow, careful work. If you left him for a long time and then returned, you would not find the same empty world. Around him, Out of those once meaningless specks of dust, new forms began to rise. At first in his mind, then in how he perceived the plain. Mountains stretched along the horizon, formed by the clusters of dust he had ranged. Rivers wound their way through these mountains, carrying little timid fish that darted beneath the shifting shadows, shadows cast by the giant beasts of prey roaming above. Birds appeared in this unfolding vision, hidden in the air, their songs echoing softly. All of them pointed back to a single hidden creator, not a god in the sky, but a mind that could admire their beauty, that could give them names. From the scattered dust, he was conjuring a universe. He now stood not as a lonely wanderer in a barren plain, but as something else. A thinker, a creator, an observer of his own work. Looking at the world he had arranged from dust, he wondered, could it be that he himself was created in the same way, carefully, patiently, grain by grain, by some other distant mind, a mind as patient as his, rearranging the dust of existence until he appeared. Maybe he was not only the creator of the world of dust, but also the creation of someone or something that once stood above an empty plain, just as he had, and began by moving a single solitary grain.